This road has been taking people for over 50 years, and not one body has ever been found. Only their shoes. And every single person who disappeared heard the same woman crying just before they vanished. My wonderful viewers, before we continue, please tell me where you are watching from in the comment section. I might just send you a virtual hug in my next video. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let me tell you why nobody in that town dares cross this road after 8 o'clock. Now, before there was a road, there was a groove. Not just any groove, a sacred one. A place where generations of families buried their dead. Every funeral followed the tradition of their ancestors. Names were spoken, prayers were offered, white cloth wrapped carefully around each body. Food was placed beside them, so that no soul will begin its journey hungry. The elders believed something very simple. When the dead are buried properly, they leave the living alone. Then, one year, everything changed. The government announced the new road. It would connect two towns. Faster transport, more business, more progress. But the shortest route went straight through the sacred groove. The elders begged, "Please, move the road, even if it is only a little. The dead are still resting here. Please." But the engineers laughed. One of them reportedly said, "Dead people don't complain." And the trees came down. Graves were moved. Some bodies were moved. Some were forgotten. Some were simply buried beneath fresh tar, without prayers, without name, without anyone left to remember them. And according to the oldest people in that town, that was the day the road stopped being just a road. But if the road became cursed that day, who was the first person it chose? At first, nobody connected it to the groove. They thought it was simply bad luck. The first person the road took was a young trader named Shade, 22 years old, kind, hardworking, known by almost everyone in the nearby villages. She had gone to the market that morning, just like she had done dozens of times before. By evening, she started the journey home, alone, carrying an empty woven basket. She was last seen just as the sun disappeared behind the trees. She never arrived. Her family searched all night. Friends joined the search the next morning. Hunters searched the forest. Farmers searched the nearby farms. And 3 days later, they found something. Her sandals, both of them, side by side, perfectly arranged, facing the road, as though someone had carefully removed them and placed them there. A basket was beside them, empty, untouched. There was no blood, no footprints, no torn clothes, no single sign of struggling. It was as though Shade had simply stepped out of the world, and the road kept her. Months passed. Then it happened again. Another traveler, another disappearance, another pair of shoes. Then another, and then another. Years passed, yet the pattern never changed. Every victim disappeared at dusk. Every victim left something behind. Shoes, sandals, a basket, a folded wrapper, a walking stick, but never a body. Then one evening, an old palm wine tapper named Babalowo heard something. At first, he thought it was a child crying somewhere in the bush, so he stopped. He listened carefully. The crying wasn't coming from the trees. It wasn't coming from the road. It wasn't behind him. It was inside his ears. A woman's voice, soft, broken, repeating the same word over and over and over again. That is, please, carry me home. Babalowo did not run. Men of his generation knew better than to run from things they could not understand. He simply walked faster, without looking back, without answering the voice, without stopping. He survived. But he became the first person to tell the village about the crying woman, who no one could see. But if people were hearing the crying, why did no one believe them? The next person to hear it wasn't an old man. He was a university graduate who believed ghosts didn't exist. His name was Wale. The story spread from village to village. Drivers whispered it. Hunters respected it. Old women warned their children about it. But not everyone believed. Years later, a young man returned from the city. His name was Wale, fresh out of the university, intelligent, confident, the kind of man who believed if something couldn't be measured, it probably wasn't real. When the elders warned him about the road, he laughed. Ghosts don't steal people, people steal people. He blamed criminals, kidnappers, wild animals, anything except the road itself. So one evening, he decided to prove everyone wrong. He packed a notebook, a torchlight, a wristwatch, fresh batteries, even a camera. If anything happened, he wanted evidence, not story. Wale reached the roadside before sunset. He checked his watch, 7:45 p.m., exactly as planned. He sat beneath a tree, facing the empty road, notebook ready, pen uncapped, torchlight beside him. At first, nothing happened, just crickets, wind moving through the tree. Then, 7:56, the wind stopped. Not slow, it was stopped. Every insect fell silent. Even the leaves refused to move. Wale frowned. He wrote, "Unusual silence observed." Then, at exactly 7:58 p.m., he heard it. A woman, crying, not somewhere ahead, not somewhere behind, inside his own ears, so close it felt as though someone was standing directly behind him, breathing. That is, please, carry me home. Wale's hand trembled for the first time that night. Still, he forced himself to write. Female voice detected. Source unknown. Moving closer to investigate. Those were the last words anyone ever read, written by Wale. The next morning, Wale's mother became worried. He had never spent a night away without telling someone, so the villagers gathered and returned to the road. They found his torchlight first, still switched on. Its battery somehow had not died. Then they found his notebook, open, resting on the ground exactly where he had been sitting. His final sentence ended halfway, as though whatever happened interrupted him before he could finish writing. But Wale was gone. No footprint, no blood, no struggle. Only one thing remained. His shoes, side by side, facing the road, just like Sade's sandals years earlier. That was the day nobody laughed at the old stories again. That evening, every elder in the community gathered beneath the oldest Iroko tree. Nobody argued anymore. Nobody asked whether the road was cursed. The only question left was how to survive it. One by one, they remembered every disappearance, every witness, every crying voice, every abandoned pair of shoes. Then they noticed something that none of them had seen before. Every single disappearance happened between 7:50 p.m. and 9 p.m. Never before, never after, as though the road itself opened for just over an hour. And whatever lived beneath it came looking for someone to carry it home. So the elders made a law, simple, absolute, passed from fathers to daughters, from mothers to sons, from drivers to their apprentices. Never ever, under any circumstance, be on that road after 8 o'clock. For years, the rule worked. The disappearance stopped. Drivers planned their journey carefully. Travelers left before sunset. The road became quiet again, not because it had forgiven them, but because nobody was giving it the chance to feed. But every cause only need one person to forget the rule. His name was Tunde, and one desperate decision would wake the road all over again. Years passed. The road remained quiet, not because it had changed, but because people had learned. Children grew up hearing the warning. Drivers checked their watches before every trip. Market women left early. Hunters refused to return late. Everyone respected the road. Everyone except one man. His name was Tunde, 28 years old, a commercial driver, honest, hardworking, a husband, a father. He knew the story. His uncle had told him about Shade, about Wale, about the crying woman, and about the shoes. But life has a way of making fear feel less important than hunger. His daughter was about to resume school. Rent was due. His car needed repairs. Every passenger meant another meal. Then, one evening, just as he was about to park, a man flagged him down. The passenger looked frightened, sweating, breathing heavily. "Please, my mother is dying. I have to get to the next town tonight." Then he offered, "I'll pay double." Tunde looked down at his wristwatch. 7:51 p.m. 50 minutes. That's all the journey normally took. He calculated quickly. If traffic is light, I'll make it. What Tunde didn't know was that the road had already started counting too. He unlocked the door. The passenger climbed in. They drove off. 3 minutes later, Tunde noticed something strange. The passenger hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't even blinked. Then it came. Soft, broken, a woman crying. That is, "Please, carry me home." Tunde tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He checked his mirrors. Nothing. He swallowed. Then asked, "Did you hear that?" The passenger slowly turned and smiled. "It's not for me." Tunde looked again at his watch. 7:57 p.m. The crying became louder. Not outside. It was inside his head. Louder and louder. His heart pounded. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The engine screamed. Almost there. Just a little further. Then, 7:58 p.m. The crying stopped. Completely. That silence was worse. Then, he saw her. A woman, leaning in the middle of the road, facing away from him, her shoulders shaking. But there was no sound. Tunde slammed his foot on the brake. Nothing. Again, nothing. The brake pedal Felt dead. The car kept moving. Closer, closer. Just before impact, the woman slowly turned her head. Nobody knows what Tunde saw because he never came home. The following morning, villagers found his car. Engine still running, headlights still on, doors locked. The passenger was walking calmly along the roadside unhurt. When they asked what happened, he said, "I closed my eyes when she turned. When I opened them, Tunde was gone." They searched for 7 days. Forest, river, bush, everywhere. They found nothing except Tunde's slippers, side by side, facing the windscreen, exactly like Sade's sandals, exactly like Wale's shoes. Most people think that's where the story ends. Another victim, another pair of shoes, another mystery. But when the elders searched the car, they found something that made every one of them step back. Sitting quietly on the passenger seat was an old woven basket, dusty, ancient, empty. It was identical to the basket Shade carried the night she disappeared. But Tunde's passenger never carried any basket, which means something placed it there. Something that has been waiting beneath that road for decades. Maybe it wasn't asking to be carried home. Maybe it was choosing who would stay with it forever. My wonderful viewers, if you enjoyed tonight's story, don't leave without subscribing to After Dark Tales by Bon. Every subscription helps this community grow, and it tells YouTube to share this African folktale with more people around the world. And before you go, don't forget to tell me in the comment section, what would you have done if you had someone whisper, "Please, carry me home," while driving alone at night? Would you run, or would you stay to help? And don't forget to tell me where you are watching from, so that I can send you a hug in my next video. Until the next time, lock your doors, avoid lonely roads after dark, and remember, some roads never forget. Good night.